US. And indeed, we're going to talk about a lot more about that in perspective now, because if you've been watching all our, and indeed the world's media coverage of Donald Trump over the last few months, there is one question that you could well be asking. Where on earth are the Democrats? Now, ever since Kamala Harris and Joe Biden moved out of the picture, it's been almost impossible keeping up with the latest twists and turns of the Trump presidency, yet alone keeping up with any voices of opposition. For the first real time, though, this weekend, so-called hands-off protests were held across the US in the largest nationwide show of opposition since the president took office in January. Joining me here on set now is Fred Hoffman, who is spokesman and secretary for Democrats abroad here in France. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us. We heard, didn't we, in those voices there, a lot of disquiet perhaps starting to filter through, at least amongst the American public. Is that something that you're seeing amongst Americans living here in France as well?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be here. Absolutely, and we're hearing it not just here in France, we're hearing it all over the world, especially Democrats who live across the globe. And in the United States, we are seeing people who voted for Donald Trump who are now disappointed because they are being affected directly. And people are seeing what kind of chaos is going on, and they're scared. So we're hearing voices everywhere. Of course, the majority of Democrats are not happy, but we're seeing Republicans and independents as well. And many people didn't vote in the election. So we're seeing people now who probably regret that they didn't vote. But absolutely, just as the people in this report were saying, they're concerned. Some of them have seen this before, and young generation, it's just a lot of unknown at the moment.
Amid that, though, if the opinion is starting to turn in that direction, why are the Democrats not taking advantage of that? Because there's a lot of criticism, isn't there?
Well,
the Democrats just aren't there.
This is the question that we're getting all the time. Where are the Democrats? Sometimes my friends are asking the same thing, my relatives. We're here. You have to remember that the Democrats are not in power right now in the Congress. And so we're limited with that. What is happening is a lot going on with town halls, with governors, senators, representatives, House of Representatives, congresspeople speaking out. I have a list here of people. Some of them are not known outside of the United States, so it may not be as interesting. There's another thing that is happening, is that the news cycle is just so concentrated on the craziness that is happening and the chaos from Donald Trump that they can't keep up with it. And so maybe some of these news stories with the Amy Klobuchar's, the Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders got some press recently. Elizabeth Warren, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. These names are starting to be known. Chris Murphy, governor in Connecticut. One that you heard a lot about recently was Cory Booker, because he did this 25-hour speech, right? So maybe he did that on purpose to get some of this attention, because the press is so concentrated on the shiny object here and the shiny object over here that you're not hearing it. But the Democrats are definitely there and doing as much as they can.
And do you think that's been a deliberate policy by Trump and his entourage to flood the market, if you like, with all these announcements, so that there just isn't time to do anything else? And everybody forgets the announcement of the day before because there's another one the next day.
Absolutely, yes. This is absolutely true. And we talked about this during the campaign, Project 2025, which was put together by the Heritage Foundation. And Trump said, oh, I don't know anything about that. But if you look at somewhere in the 900 pages, everything that is happening right now in real time is what they had wanted to do. One was, like you said, overwhelm people. Flood the United States with one thing over here, another thing. Every day there's something changing. Elon Musk, for example, is not elected. No one saw that coming. And there's indiscriminate firing of civil servants. And indiscriminate to the point where sometimes they had to rehire people back. They didn't even have their email addresses. What's happening also with the Democrats, just to come back to that, is that there is pushback. There are lawsuits being brought forward, which is something that we're hoping will hold, because we're afraid that there's going to be a true constitutional crisis with Donald Trump and his administration not listening to the justice. So, yes, what is happening right now is exactly what they want to do. Even if Trump himself didn't, it's administration, the people that put together Project 2025, And unfortunately, it's happening very quickly. And so I think now people are getting their footing, and there are, like I said, a lot more lawsuits happening and pushback.
You say people getting their footing. We're seeing some of those images behind of those protests at the weekend, which we saw. I mean, the first sort of relatively large-scale anti-Trump demonstrations. Is it the first of many, do you think?
I believe so. We had one here in Paris, also Democrats Abroad, on Saturday. There were about 650 people at Place de la République. And my colleagues who were there said that there were other people coming up to them who were not American and supporting them. But what I always say is that it's not in the American mentality and culture somewhat to take to the streets like you see, for example, here in France, in other places in Europe, in Asia. And people sometimes say, well, we saw something with George Floyd. Well, that was an outrage, and it wasn't all Americans. I mean, Americans who care and are good people, yes, they were outraged. But I do believe now, because the Democrats don't have the power in Congress, it's going to be up to the people to change by their voice, by their vote, and you're going to see more and more demonstrations like this. It's funny because earlier, just before I came here, I had on another TV station, French speaking, and the person there was an American French guy who I actually know, but from the Republicans, saying that it was only the Democratic cities where we saw that. This is not true. And like I said, they're not just Democratic cities. There are Republicans and independents and Democrats all across the nation. So.
Midterms
Yes.
coming up in just over 18 months' time.
Yes.
Of course, that's the point where the Democrats have really got the first chance to fight
Yes.
back. Are the Democrats ready for that? I mean, who's in charge, even?
That's the other question that's happening. I'm being asked all the time. Ready? You can never be ready 2 years ahead. But what is happening now is planning for all that, putting the pieces in place. And what has just recently happened is there's a change in leadership, a normal change, elections with the Democratic National Committee. So I believe that right now there are plans and strategies being put in place. This is happening anyway. There was already a plan before the election that in case Trump won, they had to start thinking about that possibility. So this has been ongoing. We don't have leadership like that. Like you said, just one person.
Do you not need that? Do you not need that face to represent?
Possibly, and some people are definitely emerging. But it's different than other countries where we don't have that party leader. And I'm sure there's going to be a few people that are really going to, be in the forefront.
Who do you think that is? I mean, you mentioned Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, both people who've been around for years. But are there other people coming through?
Yes, there's a whole new crop of younger, and they don't necessarily have to be younger, but some of them, like I mentioned, Chris Murphy, Maxwell Frost from Florida, Tim Walz, actually, who ran with Kamala Harris. People really like him. Another thing I just want to mention about that, because people say, well, why aren't the ex-presidents, the former presidents, speaking up? And you did see that a few days ago, I think 3 days ago, Barack Obama did speak up, and Kamala Harris actually spoke up. But there's an unspoken pact with the former presidents that they don't criticize the current administration. Now, Trump didn't abide by that because he criticized Biden and continues to criticize him. Now I think the gloves are off, and I do think they're going to say things. Obama brought something up which was so pertinent. We said, can you imagine if I was doing some of these things? Like banning Fox News from reporting because they didn't call it the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America. So I do think you're going to see more of this from the Democrats, and you are going to see people emerging. There are many, and they are speaking out. Like I said, they're holding town halls, and some of them are holding town halls because the Republicans are not, because they're afraid to be confronted.
Just finally, as we said, it's 18 months to go now, isn't it, really, until the
midterms.
And if the Trump strategy continues as it at the moment, how do you counter that? What do you do as Democrats to try to get your voices heard?
Yeah, I first of all, I think seeing what's happening just in this short amount of time, I think there's going to be so many people who are fed up and disappointed and hurt by all this that I feel very confident that we will take back either the Senate or the House.
But that's relying on the Republicans doing wrong rather than the Democrats.
Yeah.
Being
So
able to...
okay, good question, because people are also saying, what are the Democrats do? What are they planning? We have to learn from some of our mistakes. We lost the election. So we cannot say that we were perfect, that we were doing everything right. We need to communicate better. We need to look at what people are really, what's really affecting them. Even though I know that because someone that works with the party, we are concerned with that, but I think also we weren't communicating that clearly to people. People sometimes say that we're elite. We need to hold more town halls, listen to people, and put in place the things that the general American, the average American is looking for. So
good to talk to you on the programme today.
Good
Thank
to
you
talk
very
to
much
you
for
as well.
coming
Thank
in
you very
and
much.
talking to us on the programme. Fred Hoffman, who's spokesperson and secretary for Democrats abroad here in France. Thanks very much.
Thank you.